Western Teacher Live, talking about public education, unionism and much more.
Hello, welcome to a special series of Western Teacher Live, the State School Teachers Union of Western Australia's podcast. This series looks in detail at the agreement in principle regarding the Schools General Agreement 2023. With SSTUWA President Matt Jarman, we'll be going through the negotiations thus far, how voting works, when you can vote, what the potential consequences are of a yes or no vote, and of course details of what is included in the third offer that persuaded Executive to recommend acceptance of what is now termed an agreement in principle. You can also find all of this information online. Go to sstuwa.org.au. When you sign in, and you must sign in, a large pop-up window will appear. Click here for more info and you will be taken to all the information on the agreement in principle. Now that's if you're a member. You will be able to see the detail of the agreement without signing in if you're a non-member, but of course you won't be able to vote. You can find out where and when the next information sessions are, either online or via Zoom or in person at a venue near you. You can also find a voter info pack, summary posters, a comparison between the claim and offers, a full voter info pack, a shorter at-a-glance guide, full details of the proposed district allowances, scenarios for 7 different levels, from graduate teacher to principal, full salary tables for every role, detailed background information on several of the offer components, and of course details on the voting process and what that yes or no vote might mean. So don't take your info from social media, from your well-informed chum who might not even be a member of the union. Do go and find out for yourself. These podcasts can all be listened to in isolation, but we recommend trying to listen to them all, if you can, to get the full picture. So Matt, let's talk about process. How was this log of claims developed in the first place?
Thanks, Bob. The log of claims, of course, was endorsed at the June 2023 State Council by the delegates who were present at the time. It was quite a long process on the Saturday morning to run through each of the 90-odd claims that were in the log. And then, of course, the log went out from June State Council to the membership. We had a very, very high number, much higher than what we had seen any time in the previous decade of members who participated in that vote. And I also think, without remembering specifically, I also remember it being about an 85% approval for the log of claims to be submitted to the employer, which was around about September last year. And since September, some almost 9 months ago, we've been bargaining ever since.
And if you do need to know more about this, by the way, we did do an earlier podcast called How the EBA Process Works. You can find that on the SSTUWA website, sstuwa.org.au. And as you're listening to podcasts, I know you're all very internet savvy, but just do a search for podcasts and they will all pop up for you there. Matt, so we're now at the point of an agreement in principle being recommended by Executive. What's the difference between an agreement in principle and offer, and how do we get to this point?
Well, it has been a long process to get to this point, and I share the frustration of the membership that it's taken to 3 offers, particularly given that the union independently commissioned a report into what was wrong within the state of public education in WA, and the Minister himself also did a review into workload intensification, he called it. Which was ours was released on the November 6th and his was released sometime mid-December last year. So given the fact that the drums have been beating around concerns and widespread concerns, to have to wait 6 months to get the first offer and then 7 months to get to the third offer, I understand the frustration that the membership has, because what we're wanting to see is a good and heart and healthy public education system and it being addressed. The first and the second offer had salary components which were just completely unacceptable to the Executive to support going to the membership for a ballot. And by the time the third offer came through, we had lifted the salary component to 12% over 3 years. And of course, we had 51 different offers within the third from government, which we were then able to take out. After some considerable debate within the executive, that debate went on for a couple of days before we agreed in principle for that to be taken to the membership for final say, which is what's about to open up soon with our ballot of our entire membership, which I've said to many, many people before, I find working within and for the SSTU that it is simply one of the most wonderfully democratic organisations that I've ever seen and certainly been part of, and that's effectively what we're doing.
Now, we're going to go into more detail in essence, but why did Executive believe this was the right time?
To send out the third offer? Well, we had taken a significant action on the 23rd of April. There were 21 stop work meetings held across WA. We had the largest union rally held in WA in at least the last 15 years here in Perth. Strong support from not only our membership but also parents and also other organisations who were supporting teachers and the work of teachers through that action. And that action caused government to sit down and immediately review what they were considering to offer, and that was posted in a third offer that had responded to much of what we had not seen in the first and the second, which was workload specifically, as well as incremental salary construction, particularly to retain our most experienced teachers, as well as regional concerns that we were very disappointed didn't appear in the first and the second offer. So, in effect, the action of the 23rd of April prompted the government to respond with a third offer, which is a very significant and comprehensive offer worth a great deal of money from state coffers. For us to now decide that it was for the membership to consider the offer and vote upon it.
Now, that big turnout, massive day, huge buzz for the people who were involved, whether it was in the march across the Matagarup Bridge to Gloucester Park or whether it was in one of the many regional and smaller events. A lot of bonding going on, a lot of camaraderie there. And a lot of people will say, well, if that was so successful, was it tempting to say no to this offer and do more industrial action?
What will always stick in my mind for the 23rd of April is that it didn't matter where you were in the march or which march you were participating in, whether it be Leinster, Merredin, Perth, Karratha, all over the state. Everybody was saying the same thing, and I find that aspect completely remarkable. And we had a lot of people participating for the very, very first time. The last time we had held an industrial action on that scale was more than a decade ago, and an entire generation of teachers and school leaders are now in our schools. And yes, they are quite addictive. You may wish to be in that space forever, but at the end of the day, an industrial action which cost those members who participated in, and there are reports that there were up to about 12,000 of those, that cost them a half day of their wage to participate in that, and the executive has to take that into account as much as anything else when it's considering the position we're in. And escalating further from a third offer was a significant part of the executive's decision making, as it ought to be. That is simply being responsible. And from one of those kinds of reasons, that's why the executive made the vote to send it out to our membership.
And we should be really clear on this. That doesn't mean that the agreement in principle is accepted, because that's up to the members. So tell us a little bit about when the members can vote and how they can vote.
The member vote won't open until after the June State Council, and that'll be closing on the 4th of July, which is unfortunately in the middle of the school break, but simply because we received the third offer so late in what is already a very long term for teachers and school leaders. We would rather it have been wound up before the school break, because we don't like to necessarily bother our members during the school break period, but we're going to have to on this occasion, and we'll know following on pretty quickly really from the July 4th. It's a simple yes-no vote, what the outcome is, and then we'll inform government of whatever that vote outcome is as well.
And how will people vote, and do they have to be members?
They have to be a member, and this is where the mischievous behaviour of people who are not members in those online forums who are trying to influence our members is a little bit on the frustrating side. These are people who are not paying fees, who are not contributing to the vote, but they are having a very strong say. Whether or not it's being listened to is a completely different issue, of course. But nonetheless, it is a member vote only. It is it's not a compulsory vote. We don't do that, and we wouldn't never do that. But we suspect that we'll have a lot of members who will vote when it does open, and when it does open, that is held off away from senior officers and organisers. That is a completely confidential matter. We will only find out the outcome of the vote after it has been closed. And sorry, Bob, and that's a really important point, because for organisers and senior officers, our job right now is to simply communicate what will happen if we have a yes, what will happen if we have a no, and what the content of the offer is. And we will have to continue to do that quite delightfully, really, talking to our members right up until the end of that voting period.
And that sort of brings me on. So in terms of informing people about what is in the offer and the agreement, obviously we've talked about the written version of the materials. They're all online. People are listening to these podcasts. What's happening in addition to that? Are you going out into workplaces? Are you doing Zooms? What's the story?
We're doing all of the above. We're trying to get to as many schools, informal, formal branch meetings, town hall meetings, online forums for regions as well as statewide. We've obviously got all the materials now up on the member login page to the website. So now that the material and the information is properly flowing out, better questions and better conversations are being had, and that's really important. It is a very significant offer, and it is a very significant period of time for the membership. So there's enough time for everyone to, I know it's a very busy time in schools as well with reporting and end of semester one approaching, but nonetheless it's a very important thing to sit down, have a look at the materials, have a look at it with your colleagues if that's where you prefer, and make an informed choice.
So what's the situation then if the membership has the final say, and they've obviously got their normal choice? You can abstain, but it seems a bit pointless. So you either vote yes or you vote no. What are the consequences if the membership says no, we're not satisfied, we want to go back and take this back into the field of industrial action?
Well, they'll come back to the executive initially, but I think everyone needs to look at what and how this government has responded to other unions who have done something similarly. And we've already had formal correspondence from the West Australian Industrial Relations Commission, which indicates that they clearly intend to intervene. And they have every right to do so. And of course, once the WA IRC is involved, there is an impact on our bargaining power. Their obligation is not to focus on making sure that the fairest deal is delivered. That's what we do as the bargaining team. Their obligation is to make sure that the process has been followed. And that's a very, very important consideration for our members to be aware of, because if the Commission considers that everybody has been participating in good faith, and I don't have any evidence in front of me to suggest that they won't come to that determination, then they can simply turn around and mediate the outcome of the process, and that's the final decision has been made. What we have tried to do, and I think we've done it quite successfully, is stay in the front position, trying to navigate all of this bargaining for our members, and having immediate executive meetings and responding to offers has been part of that strategy. But once we start to lose our position in the bargaining equation, then we start to lose our power, and that's something that our members need to be very well aware of. Government also is not obligated to provide back pay. Back pay is a consequence of good faith bargaining, and whilst we've been doing that, there's no obligation for back pay to be delivered back to the 6th of December 2023. And I suppose just as importantly as anything else, the government itself has demonstrated through negotiation processes with the police and with the nurses' unions that they can come in rather swiftly and just pay the salary component. Now, if that were to occur, all of the conditions, the 51 conditions that are in the third offer, they can effectively be considered quashed. And that is something that our membership also needs to be quite well aware of, that there is no obligation, because there's been nothing that's been formally agreed to, for the government to honour any of those 51 conditions whatsoever. If it is a yes outcome in the ballot, then correspondence goes rather quickly to the government, following on from information going to our membership. And then we go through a technical period of time where the words on the materials that our members are reading right now are converted into more appropriate general agreement language. We're part of that. And then it's straight off to the Commission for registration. And really the Commission will be asked to consider this as a priority because of the size of the workforce and how long these negotiations will have been going by then. And then, of course, flowing on from that, I would imagine that members could expect in one of those August, maybe, pay cycles, they can expect to see the 5% from the December 2023 component if it is a yes, and then of course they'll receive allowances on top of that, and then the 4% from December later on in the year as well.
Okay, and we've mentioned recently, but people can see the information if they're not members of the SSTUWA, excuse me, but you must be a member to vote. So to have a say, you've got to pay your dues and join the union. Can still people do that in time to have their voices heard?
Oh, they certainly can, and we're certainly seeing that as well. There are people who have been joining the SSTU at quite a rate since the very beginning of the year. There's no question that the 23rd of April and indeed the entire industrial process has activated people in schools. They want to be more informed. That is a fantastic outcome for everybody, because it is very important that we have a look at the whole picture of public education right now. The EBA is all but one moment in time. We have a long-term commitment to try to address as many of the issues in public education as we possibly can. At the moment, you could call the backdrop of that facing the facts, where we have a on-the-record commitment of a couple of years to get through those 47 key recommendations. The EBA, incidentally, Bob, the third offer of the EBA, it directly connects to 19 of those 47 recommendations from facing the facts. And if you had said to me back on November 6 last year that by May our membership would be considering a third offer that hits 19 of the 47 recommendations, I would have thought that you were unemployable. But quite frankly, that is exactly what's been achieved in that third offer, and that is a remarkable outcome for facing the facts, which is all about trying to fix public education.
Excellent. So there's your intro to how you can vote, where you can find the info, and why it is so important to understand what the consequences are of a yes or a no vote, because at the end it's your choice. So we're now going to move on, and we hope that you'll enjoy the next segment of this Western Teacher Live.
Western Teacher Live, cutting through noise on public education and union issues.